feeling better? All right. Welcome to the final session, Lightning Talks. Okay, so far today, we've heard about the broader CMC ecosystem from Pavel. We heard about Project Artemis, and we just wrapped up a pretty exciting panel that ran a little over, but really got into some deep topics. So really, really good conversation so far. I've heard a lot of comments from folks on the side about them enjoying it. We're going to move to the next session now, and hopefully, too, unless you've completely failed, you should have met everybody in this room. Is that a statement that anyone would disagree with? Is there someone in the room you haven't met yet? There are. Okay, you guys are failing. So I hate to tell you that, but when this is over, I know some folks that are local need to run out of here, but when this is over, I want you guys to go up to the people that you haven't met and shake their hand. Okay? And that goes for me too. There's some faces that I just noticed I haven't met yet. So, okay. So best for last. This section is short talk. So these are called lightning talks because they're like lightning fast. So we have 3 different topics. Now we're a little bit different here. So if you have a burning question that you want to ask the presenter, of course, please ask it. This definitely is a dialogue. But I'm going to tell you, we're going to have a group Q&A at the end too. So there's a separate section at the end where we'll have some conversation and try to find some commonalities across those groups. So if you can, hold your question, but I certainly will hold a gun to your head to do so. So with that, first I will invite the fantastic duo from Bayer Pharmaceuticals on up, Florian Oppert and Isabel Hagemann. Hopefully I did that right. I don't think I did. Florian is a lab leader at Bayer Biologics Development Group, and he has been since 2018. He represents the upstream part of the conversation in this duo, and Isabel is a scientist from the downstream portion of Bayer Biological Development and has been there since 2017. So the two of them are going to co-present on an innovative solution they've come up with to use platform knowledge to accelerate tech transfer times, and that they've rolled out at Bayer. So they're going to talk you through that, and with that, I'll hand it over to them. Come on up.
Start here. Yeah, so hi everybody. I'm Isabel Hagmann. This is Flo. I like to start today with our case study about tech transfer and using QbDVision. Yeah, this works. Very good. So I will very briefly give you an overview over the biotech world of Bayer, and then we directly go to the case study and the platform process topic as next. So very quickly, you can see a map. I just want to highlight our biological development sites from Bayer. You can see a few spots in Europe and a few spots in US. These are our main sites where we develop biological processes. We are dealing with a quite diverse set of different modalities, so recombinant proteins, antibodies, and conjugates, but also we are in gene and cell therapy and gene editing reagents. We deliver full integrated biologic process development and clinical manufacturing capability from research, target discovery to launch and marketing. And I want to highlight 2 pictures here out of a few sites we have, but here you can see our cell culture plants with the 200 and the 2,500 liter scale. They are both located in Wuppertal, and they will be in the focus of our case study today. And this brings me actually to the next slides regarding our case study. So starting with the tech transfer topic, so we've heard for a few moments today, we talked about the technology transfer, so giving only a very brief introduction to it. So what technology transfer means is that to control the transfer of products and processes and knowledges, including its documentation from a sending to a receiving site, which will be the 200 liter scale in our case study to the 2,500 liter scale. Often it's for scalar purposes or to manufacture more material. And of course, we have quite a general principles we have to fulfill. So first of all, there's a comprehensive gap analysis, and this will be the focus of our today's talk. That you assess the risk of the changes between the sending and the receiving unit, and often a cross-functional team is involved. We have discussed this today a few minutes and hours ago. So actually our case study today will be the documentation of a gap analysis for process transfer and scale-up of antibody manufacturing processes from the development function, so non-GMP, 200 liter, to a GMP site, 2,500 liter, to produce material for clinical studies. So I've brought this slide to give you an idea of what we have done before we have used QbDVision. So we used to use Excel for performing a risk assessment. So of course you find a section on the left for describing the process on the sending and the receiving side, and on the right side you can see fields for risk scores and justifications for detectability, uncertainty, and so on. And as we all know, Excel is not a digital approach in total, so we're all used to it, but it's not what we want to have in the future. We had large project teams who were involved in this exercise, and we discussed the risks line by line, so it was a quite time-consuming approach, and we did not differentiate between platform-specific changes from the sending to the receiving side and between project-specific changes. And we had no tool to constantly track our changes in the platform. And what's the benefit of it? We will talk about it in a few minutes. First off, before we come to this, I would like to show you how we have implemented QbDVision for tech transfer purposes. So what we have done at very first is we have established or implemented a platform process in QbDVision. So this is meant by the left corner. We defined the process of the sending side, so this 200 liter scale, which, where we have a platform process. We defined the process including standard equipment and materials, and we've done it for the receiving side as well. So including the scale-up, the standard equipment for this side, and so on and so forth. And then we did a gap analysis of these platform process. May sound a bit weird, but I would like to give you an example why it makes sense to us. So here is the UV cell path length. This is a parameter referring to the equipment. It's not a process parameter which may be changed due to or based on the molecule itself, but it depends on the equipment, and we have equipment on the sending side and on the receiving side. So this change will come up in every project until we use other equipment. And so we assess this risk, which is not part of the slide, it would be on the right side, but we assess a general risk for this change. And then we move through all our parameters from both sides and did this risk assessment. We did it in a cross-functional group, so with a small subject matter experts from GMP development and QA, and the whole thing, so sending and receiving side, including the gap analysis, is now our default process. And why we have done it, this is our starting point for all upcoming projects. So after kicking off a tech transfer, we copy this whole thing as our platform, as our default tech transfer process. This is done by the development representative, because that's the one who defines the process in the beginning. And then the development representative changes all the project-specific changes, so what really depends on the molecule. This is entered, and for any entry which is changed, we change the assessment status from complete to not started. So it's complete by default, by this default platform process, and every time we change something, we put this assessment status on not started. And why are we doing this? With QbDVision, we can use the function of filtering. So we can filter all our process parameters for not started and have a really short list of all our project-specific changes. And now the representative on the receiving side, in our case it's a GMP colleague, goes through these changes. Then he knows where you have to adapt the process on the receiving side. And then we have adapted our platform process on the sending and on the receiving side. The next step is the gap analysis. And here we can use the same function. We can look for the changes. And now we have a very short list, which we have to discuss in our team, where we have really project-specific changes. It can be prepared by individuals or done in the group, but following this approach, we were able to significantly reduce the number of changes we had to access during a tech transfer. And furthermore, we have the opportunity to get process description out of the system for both processes. And we have, with QbDVision, a tool to track our platform changes, so changes in our platform process. And this will be further explained by Florian.
Thank you very much. How much time do I have left? Can anybody tell me? Maybe. I'm not sure how much detail I can provide here. Is it like 5 minutes? I'm looking for Luke. 5 minutes? All right. Okay. So these are you will see now 2 dimensions on this slide. One is that, and that's one goes from left to right, is the project dimension. When we copy a platform project and make a project out of it, that's what actually Isabel explained already. So in that project, we now can track the changes between the non-GMP process and the GMP process, project specifically. We can also, on top of that, see, and that's sometimes of interest, or many times of interest. We want to track back, or we want to see what is the change to the actual platform process at the time where the project was started. So it's not like we have a clear business case for that. We talked about business case driven or technology driven. I'm not sure what this is. I think it's both, maybe, but you can trace back the changes to the platform as well as the changes within the project, and of course you can trace back the changes throughout the different versions of your manufacturing process. So then the other dimension is the platform dimension, and this is really new, and it's still work in progress in terms of integrating it into our organization within Bayer. So we have to really define a workflow how to do that. But we will have a full track record of our platform process in the future as it evolves. So we have now a tool where we can change. So we have a documented platform process in a digital system, and that's first of all that's the first time we have that. And on top of that, we can trace back all the changes that have been done over the course of over time. So this is now the starting point. So we are now at the very top left of the slide. But in the future, like 10 years from now, we will have, I don't know what platform version we will have, and we will be able to trace back everything up until today. And this is now the last layer, and I think this is just optional. With every project that will be created in the future, let's say 5 years from now, you will also copy or be able to copy all the history, or the whole history from your platform, which is basically not really needed. But I just wanted to put it on the slide just to have it complete. But I think for this one, there's not a real business case yet. Maybe there will be. At least it's possible. Okay, coming to the results and what we actually improved. So Isabel said it already, we reduced, basically by having this platform approach, we were able to reduce the number of records or process items. that we actually have to discuss dramatically. We didn't reduce the number of people that were involved in the tech transfer. We just reduced the number of items that had to be discussed, because most of the items, because we have a platform, have been assessed already by our SMEs and don't have to be assessed anymore. And it was actually very easy to convince also our QA department to follow that approach. At the beginning, they were a little bit reluctant, but after telling them the whole story, giving them the bigger picture, they agreed, and now we can do it like this. And by that, we could reduce the number of meetings that were previously needed for upstream from 10 meetings to 2 meetings. And that's why we, of course, could reduce the overall costs. So if you look at the numbers, they're a little bit based on assumptions. So we calculated, for example, for $100 per working hour. And that's how we came up with this with these numbers at the end. But basically, bottom line is we reduced the timelines from I think from the saving was 2 to 6 weeks compared to before, and we could reduce the number of meetings and the time spent doing tech transfer. On top of that, we were able to focus more on what actually matters. So what really changes compared to the platform is that what has to be really discussed. So we were able to spend more focus and time discussing that. And of course, we could create our documents using QbDVision in an automated, semi-automated manner. I think there's still room for improvement here, which is the gap assessment and the process description. But I think another big value was also created because when having or establishing this platform, you can add knowledge in your platform project. So when I go back here, where's the pointer? So this is the part where all your knowledge resides in. And you can add knowledge throughout, like all the time, and you can update everything. And this knowledge is transferred to every project in the week and in the future. And I think this is a great tool to create and mine knowledge. And that's not, I mean, there are numbers, we save time and we save resources, but actually the numbers in terms of how many dollars we saved or euro, that's not a big chunk compared to what other costs are there in the pharmaceutical industry. But creating and mining this knowledge, I think that's something quite innovative. All right, I think I summed it all up already. So what are the next steps? I already said this platform approach still has to be rolled out in our organization. We have to find or define a way how to manage that. What are the checkpoints and what is the workflow to update and govern this process? What's clear is that we will use QbDVision for that. But we have to define the responsibilities and such, and further work on the automation of the document creation. And then we can just keep mining the knowledge by adding it into the QbDVision platform project and benefit from it now and in the future. All right. I think that's it. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Thank you guys both. That was fantastic. Really, really appreciate that. I know it's a blast to work with you guys, and thank you for the wonderful presentation.
I think we sit down then and
yes,
ready for
we'll pull you up for the panel at the end. Some awesome insights there, and of course, a popular topic is, of course, in the industry platform processes today, and how do we leverage them? So it's really cool to see the Bayer team putting that in action and really saving time and dollars. And I think the interesting thing here too, to keep in mind, to track back to some of the prior conversations, is maybe we didn't reduce the number of people involved, but that's okay. What we did is got them doing yet less, in Fran's words, useless tasks, right? things that already have been assessed don't need to be reassessed, and really leveraging and harnessing the power of technology to take that away. And then, of course, you get to spend your time on actually improving product quality. That's the goal, right? So get rid of the busy work and put some time towards that. So 70, 80% return on investment there, I think, is really awesome. All right, we're doing a little bit of a program switch here, but next up to the stage, I'm going to welcome Paul Denny Gouldson. So we heard some questions from Paul earlier. Thank you. Paul is the Chief Scientific Officer at Ziffo R&D. Paul has an impressive background of working across the industry. So he, too, has been on the sponsor side for Cent at Sanofi. He's been on the software side at IDBS. And he's also currently on the implementation side at Ziffo. So, and I had the pleasure to chat with him today. I learned one of Paul's hobbies is coaching. So he's avid in coaching, whether that be hockey, which, by the way, similar to us Americans screwing up soccer and football, I guess hockey also means something a little different here, too. I just learned that today. But Paul is a hockey coach, but also really big on coaching in internal resources and towards digital transformation. So Paul is at heart a pharma geek in many different ways, but Paul's going to take us through an overview of some lessons learned from implementing digitization, especially within the CMC space. So please, Paul, come on up.
All right, big green button, right? So, thanks guys for your time. First things first, I'm going to steal, you did a really nice thing this morning, getting the hands up. So, how many of you were or are scientists? Oh. How many of you now sit on the IT side? Tech? Yeah, okay. Which is your favorite? So, I love science. I love technology, and kind of where they intersect. I've always been fascinated by how things work, why things work. That stems back to being really annoying for my mother, because when I was a kid, they were laughing at me this morning when I said I was 50, so I was born in the 70s, before Star Wars. And they were saying they weren't even born before Friends this morning, weren't you? Laughing at me. Was I used to dismantle her radio. Every time she would get a new radio, and I'd dismantle it and try and work out how it was going and what it was working. And it took me a very long time to realize that all radios work pretty much the same. And taking them apart is way, way easier than putting it back together. So she used to tell me, you're very special. And I am. I consider myself as special. Others call me weird, whatever you want to call it. This topic takes me way back into my life. I spent quite a while whilst at IDBS working in the CMC, part of either on the large molecule side and on the small molecule side. But what I wanted to talk today was about our lessons learned and my lessons learned. And some of these, I'm just reiterating what people have said already this morning and this afternoon. First things first is understand the value. If you don't know what the value is that you're going to bring with technology, it will likely fail. And that comes, sometimes we stem from, we're so fascinated with the technology. We love the technology and we try and force that technology, round pegs and square holes and all those sorts of things, into an environment, and we focus on the tech, not what we're trying to change or what value we're bringing. And so part of what we've learned is if we can establish that early on, and hence my question this afternoon to, okay, how do you demonstrate value and build value when you have to do it really, really fast? And it is about those incremental benefits, but having this kind of vision that everyone can believe in. The red circle there tells me where I'm going to spend a little bit more time on, but this is kind of how we're kind of talking about the different things that we can do during digital transformation. And this isn't just in CMC, this is across the whole of the business. First things first, it's the process, it's the science, it's what is going on in the business and understanding what is being done and what that needs to look like. Big learning here. Don't just replicate what you do in paper or what your current process is. Think outside the box, and that sometimes is really hard, getting people to say what is possible, because they sit within their little dot. Where's the laser? There we go. They sit within their little bit here, right? And they don't know what goes on upstream. They don't know what goes on downstream. And so understanding that, but then breaking down that understanding and saying, look, guys, maybe if we did it like this, this could be better. So we're not replicating. Scientific data, I'm going to drop into this. It's a bit of a nerdy, geeky part, but it is fundamental to delivering that business change and that business value. Because if you don't have the data, you can't do all of this cool stuff that all of your CIOs and CEOs are saying, we need AI, we need to be doing all this cool stuff. The other bit I'm happy to talk about afterwards is this. This is the next kind of priority. Most organizations are not geared up to support this data-driven or digital environment. And that stems from the scientists, you know, us oldies, that kind of go, oh, why do I need to do that? Why do I need to put this metadata here? Why do I need to do that? Why can't I just take a picture? Well, because it doesn't work. Right up until the youngsters are saying, this is amazing. I can do all this in my phone. Why are you guys so slow? And so the organizations are not capable of delivering, or our organizations are not capable of delivering. But that also stems to, how do I support that data environment? How can I enable scientists to still do their science, but not get in the way, not leave them making things up? We had a quick discussion at lunchtime. Oh, how many protocols have you got for da-da-da-da? Oh, 60,000. 60,000 protocols for doing the same thing, pretty much. Because people don't know how to manage that and how to build a protocol, how to add a new term into the master data management system, whatever it is. So we're seeing a big trend there of data stewardship, data support, data management support in the business that has, over the last 5 or 10 years, been removed, because why do we need that? And the last one is the tech. We talked a little bit more, someone was talking about, how do I decouple everything? Yeah, it's hard. But decoupling everything from everything else, it done in the right way, incrementally, can lead to agility. And we talked about agility just a little while ago, of how do I meet the business and change with the business. But really, the tech is the easy bit. If you know the problem, if you know how you're going to solve it, you know what data you need, and you know how you're going to deliver it, the tech isn't the problem. Okay, so that's our other learnings that we've got. So some of these slides I can't take credit for. Tamerlan is our CMC expert at Zifo. He's based in the US. Apologies, he couldn't come over. But he has been working in this space for a long time and helping Zifo kind of aggregate all of our knowledge and experience from working. But quality by design, we're talking about QbDVision in terms of delivering that. But all of these challenges we've talked about already. But data strategy, in terms of bringing that to the fore and understanding how that impacts digital transformation is absolutely fundamental. But all of these things we have to worry about. There's lots of things to do and to deliver. Kind of an approach, we talked a little bit about FAIR. The learning here is FAIR is okay, but we need to have a domain understanding of how to apply FAIR as well. Because FAIR is fluffy. Yeah, what's findable? What's accessible? What's interoperable? What's reusable? And so we've been just looking at kind of ways to get there in a systematic way. But the other thing you need to be aware of is not all data is born equal. Okay, so some is of far more value than others. And trying to make everything completely fair is a failed mission. So look at what is required of that data and how far down that fair journey you want to go. So some people call this kind of fair enough data in a kind of pun, kind of British kind of, downplaying it way. So what are we looking at? So how we're looking at is trying to break down each of these parallel processes and look at how do we underpin that process with data. So how can we help with a data model and data understanding so that we can deliver We talked about knowledge, these knowledge bases. Knowledge isn't just data. You have to have context and meaning around that data so that the decisions can be made. So this is what we're trying to get to. Yeah? We've got a process and we're trying to get to the decisions. The bits in the middle, kind of that's the magic. No, I'm just joking. It's just making sure that we understand how these things are linked together. However, there are some risks, all right? We need to make sure that things that impact, particularly in CMC, I'd say early research predominantly has got away from paper, part and parcel to ELNs. I'll put my hand up, that's my fault, one of them anyway. But where we see the paper creeping in, or it's still there, is in this space. So how can we really define the need for digitalization and digital delivery? Data silos. A new system comes in. It could even be, the brand newest technology. If it's still not connected, if it's not part of an overall data strategy, you're still just creating another silo, even if it's a silo of silos. Yeah. The legacy disaster by ELN and LIMS. Yeah, again, I'll put my hand up for one of those, but ELNs were designed to do a certain thing. They did it, but then they were forced and they morphed into doing things that they shouldn't have been doing. LIMS is the same thing, right? We've all been there. But that system, if we just squint, tweak it a bit, it will do that. But it wasn't designed for that. So that's where we are now, 15. All these, the ELNs and the LIMS have been around for 25, 30 years. So they do something, but it's not part of a digital strategy. It was all about electronic. So we have to remember that. Silent resistance by scientists. So it's there, right? But it's also silent resistance by everybody. Why do we change? Why do we need to change? This is too hard. All of those things. So kind of hitting that head on and engaging with the business. And people talk about change management, but it's not just about that. There's this other word that someone mentioned today, which is really good, digital literacy. Do you, as a scientist or whatever you do you understand where your data is used and where data comes from? Yeah, it doesn't just fall out of the sky. Well, some of it does. Yeah, but understanding that and understanding that the digital environment is about understanding and knowing that you're adding value to a process, to a value stream, is critical. And so we get asked a lot now to help just with nothing to do with science, nothing to do with data. Can you help our scientists understand about digital and increase their digital literacy? So that's quite good fun. But balancing the science and digital is always tricky. We can't go full on technology and digital, but then we can't just go all on science. There has to be a compromise. There has to be change and adopting new ways of working on both sides. So this is where we're going in terms of data models, and the Project Artemis is a perfect opportunity. I speak for Ziffo in this respect, is we would love to get involved in that, because we don't want to be going and selling and talking about the same thing to everybody and saying, here's a data model, and they change it. Let's put that in the open source environment and work it towards it. So we've worked across many, many different environments in terms of what those data models need to do and actually putting them into practice. So this is what we have. We also have pharma kind of data models that we've developed. But in terms of general models that help people get going really fast, so you don't have to look at that, or just checking, we have a data model, does ours meet that? Are we missing things, or are we missing relationships or ability to model the real world? And so some of the ones at the bottom specifically have been through a number of iterations with a number of customers. And again, happy to talk about those. And so really, the examples, we've worked in kind of implementation of software, we've worked in implementation of strategy, we've worked in implementations of data strategies. And I think this is a nice example of a specific problem that someone came to us with, optimizing tablet formulations, and how to kind of merge that. I need to do some technology work, but I also need to do some science change. How do I do those in kind of lockstep so that I can show value, deliver value, and develop my technological capabilities within the organization? So we looked at what people were doing in the lab. You can probably been through all of those yourselves. You've looked at how do we gather the information. We look at the overall process. Where does the key data elements move? Who needs to see those pieces of data? What solutions and capabilities are involved in that? The one key thing was looking at the decisions those people wanted to make, and looking at how do you ensure that the data is attributed to an event, a person, a process. And there was a lot of this data attribution missing. So data was kind of sitting there, but no one knew where it came from. But they were still using it. That's good. Vocabulary, we talked a little bit about it earlier, right? Vocabulary is fundamental. It's how we communicate, and that scientific vocabulary, whilst I don't believe personally that we will ever come up with a unified vocabulary across every single person who works in any industry across the world, we can come up with frameworks that allow us to use known entity names, but we can call them something else. As long as we know that they map to this other thing, so synonyms are a great opportunity here to use a model, but you can tailor it. You're not changing the data model. You're saying, use your language, but I know what you mean. So that's really things there. And then data structuring. So we looked at common data models. We have a lot of experience, and people ask us, how can we help with getting submission ready? Not saying we're doing the submissions, but getting the submissions ready, so understanding what those things are. And of course, we wouldn't be here unless we mentioned AI/ML readiness. If I could leave you with one piece of information or one thing to do, is do not accept anybody who says that AI or ML will fix bad data. And if they say we're going to make an AI, we're going to develop some models based on our current, excuse my French, crappy data, stay as far away from that as possible, because it will not work. Because it's the same old rubbish in, rubbish out. And people still believe it, particularly at those levels, higher up, and they push you to do things. But you have to resist it. Resistance is futile, I know, but there we are. So these are kind of some of the things that we went through, and just going through each step from that formulation process and looking at how do we capture and leverage all of that data. It's good fun, right? It's good science. Now, I'm going to stop there, because I think that's 15 minutes, probably. But if anybody does want to talk about data models, I do like to talk about data models in minute detail. So we can go through some of these if you want over a beer. It kind of goes, there you go. It gets even bigger, and then it goes up even more and stuff like that. So thank you very much, and I hope it was of interest.
Each of you talked about sort of some opportunity from your perspective. Would you each go through and share what would you need to do? One of the themes from today was scaling up. What do we need to do to drive some of the things that you were discussing today forward at a quicker pace? How do we take the learnings that you guys shared and the work that you're doing and really put it on steroids? And I'm going to start with the Bear team here first.
Okay, so maybe I start. Yeah, I think there are a few, where to start. So I think I'd like to share, first of all, what was difficult for us, because we both worked quite a lot with the software, and then we spread it to all our colleagues, and it was quite tough to get them all on board. So maybe yeah, it's the training part was one thing that, yeah, makes things a bit slower, so to say. That's one thing. I think another thing is that it's the structure we have to build at front, similar to what we have already discussed, that we all get the structure so other people can join it and use it.
Awesome. Flo?
Yeah, just to add to this, so it was a big chunk of work to establish this. So we had a kickoff meeting in March, I think last year, where we kicked things off. Where also upper management was there, and we made a plan. So we want to do this. We want to transfer our platform process and run through this whole exercise, which took us a month to go through that exercise without any initial value. Then we had this platform then established in QbDVision, but we never. But the value just is added with every new project that comes in, and we had to make that clear in front of also upper management that the value is added across time, and do this expectation management, and also that it will take a lot of time to go through it because you have limitations. You have to the value was clear, but of course it's technology driven, or not driven, but it's QbDVision was the tool at hand. So people had to get used to QbDVision, and so many things that we haven't considered at the beginning, talking about so many things which are not related to the process at all, which led to the fact that it took us a month to get there. So we didn't say that in the presentation, but the amount of working hours that went into that covered maybe more than just one tech transfer. So it was a huge chunk, and we had to communicate that at the very beginning, because otherwise people would have gotten frustrated. Oh, this is taking so long. But you didn't say that. We said at the very beginning, this is going to be a big heavy lifting exercise, and then we had their buy-in. Yeah.
Awesome.
With this example.
Paul?
So, is this? Keep talking and it comes up.
I think I'll take that and then go in the same direction, which is expectation management is not just about the time, it's about the cost and the fact that when you start, you will get understanding and information that is useful. After that, you're going to have to take a risk. And we've ended up in this very risk-averse world where, even someone spending $50 on something comes under extreme scrutiny at that level. So this risk and reward kind of approach is completely skewed now, I think, to risk averse. And so you see small investments rather than a vision, a 3-year plan, knowing that you're not going to put in 10 million right up front, but you may need to put in 10 million to get to the end point. So yeah, this risk averse kind of element is something that we see a lot, I see a lot. And then the other part is being able to show the value on that journey, so that your point is sometimes we have to do this hard work up front to even just break over the activation energy. So that is really hard in today's climate of lots of people changing, huge pressure on budgets, and one kind of thing that we've found that people are starting to do is looking at how do they generate white space in their product portfolios. So if they rationalize, that's what gives them the opportunity to go, rather than doing everything adding on, is let's get rid of a load of stuff, and that gives us the space to work in. But yeah, that's I see as the barrier.
Awesome. Laurent?
Yeah, I think I see it very similarly. So ideally, if we want to be successful, I think we have to work together, or maybe to formalize some of these common things, like we could do like data model and everything, but then we have to use it. And I think that's embrace it. and not having as an extra stuff that is done like you would keep your document-based process and you have other people typing in the forms. This is how we have handled like XCV MPD and some of these other data requests in the past. So we really need to find a way how we can use it, make it a part of our process. People work with this data and this system, and it's bringing them benefits. So they also would see the value, and then I think it will become easier to progressively convince the rest of the organization. But yeah, just making everything available in structure in a data lake that nobody is having access to and nobody is using and getting any value except 2-3 people that can do a super fancy dashboard from time to time, you will not get very far with that.
Awesome. So it sounds like there's some really good opportunities to do some upfront work around this and really drive some change. So let's open it up to the audience. Is there a question out here from anyone? We got Ryan jumping around with the mic. Dr. Boyle?
Thank you. Yeah, my question is to Paul. So you were piling on the literacy topic, right? So what I've been missing to see is that I mean, you go to people and say, yeah, we're going to do this now in digital ways, and they don't see the value added for them, so they're not willing to do the heavy lifting, right, up front, because they're in their box, right? So like, for me, the big question is like, how do we get the big picture into people so that they understand, let's say the regulating team or regulators team is actually benefiting from having a structured data set of your manufacturing process so they can use it in the submission, let's say, right? Just as an example, so how do you bring that across?
Really good question, thank you. We've had a lot of success with bringing it back to why are you being a scientist in a pharma company? You're doing it to help people. You're doing it to make a drug or deliver a drug, and so whenever you walk in the front door, those values, patient-centric, patient first, whatever it is, are there. And so we've had a lot of success of bringing it back to that. If you can make the relationship between the reason why someone is asking you to spend 2 seconds more to type in a sample ID that is referenced or do it in this way is because they need the data for what they do. And so early on, it's about mapping the high-level process, bringing those groups together, the multidiscipline team, and saying, I asked them, do you know what those guys do with your data? Do you know how long it takes them to get this or do this? Do you know that they repeat that or they can't find it? And most people in a pharma company as a scientist want to do a good job. And so you are able to make that emotional link with what are they trying to do with changing some habits. And they are micro habits that they need to change. And it all comes back to get a little bit better every day. And so if you can put that kind of process in, and then that brings me on to my coaching kind of stuff.
And now the boss of the department comes and says, why is it my resource that I have to invest?
Get rid of him. No, joking. It does require this understanding of what you're trying to do, not just at the scientist level, but everybody. You are part of a business. And I've seen various things, customers that we've worked with and I've worked with personally many years ago, did a systematic change of behavior on ELN. One was, if you want to use the ELN, you can. Okay, we got 20, 30% of the population. Everyone else, that will disappear in 6 months. Never going to do it. I'm going to stick with my paper lab notebook. Next year, people said, we would really like you to use it. And if you do, it will go as a brownie point on your annual review. Ooh.
That might be my phone.
So it proves that they are listening. And the second year, then you see 60, 70% adoption because they realize, and then the guys before were saying, well, actually it does a lot of good. The last year is, if you don't do it, you will not get a bonus. There you are, boom, instant. And it does take, but they did it over 3 years. So it wasn't if you don't use it, you don't get a bonus to start with, but that changed and you just dial up from carrot to stick. So yeah, it's a good point, but there's no easy answer. These are big organizations and big things we're trying to deal with, but it comes back to the investment. How much investment are you going to put into that to get the change?
That's awesome. Tying it back to the people factor, the human change. That's at the heart of everything we do. I love that. Anyone else want to add on to that? No? Okay. Any other questions from the audience?
I would have one. There's a question over there.
I think just to add on to what Paul said, because I work with Paul, I think one of the things I have seen, and I'm sure Paul will attest to it, is sometimes you do get those questions from managers to say, why should I use my resource to do this or that, right? And I think it's valid because what they see is just their department, and spending that 5 minutes to do that means that their resources is doing something else, which to them is not part of their deliverables, right? And it goes back to communicating the value and letting, because the problem with CMC is because there's a lot of teams involved, usually changing one aspect will not change the whole thing. What you tend to do is you create a bottleneck somewhere else, right? And it's about communicating the value to say, they said 3-year strategy. The first year, only this team is going to be more efficient, but that means that the next team is not going to be that efficient, but that's okay, right? The next year, we're going to improve that section. You will see this will be more efficient, that one will be more efficient, but you're not going to see the value until the very end, right? And sometimes, one of the conversations that we've had is, okay, if you're going to do this body of work, how can we bring value to the people above, because they see the efficiency, they see the time saved, right? And sometimes it's as simple as, is the discussion could be, rather than start in the middle, why don't we start at the beginning or end? Because if you start at the end, you'll be able to save some time, and you will be able to say, actually, we saved 5 minutes per day or whatever, which translates to, I don't know, $10 or whatever, right? And you're able to calculate backwards. And so you try and limit that bottleneck. And so you're able to put some monetary value to that. And it's easier to get budgets because you're able to then say, we did this body of work this year. We started at the end. We saved, I don't know, 50 hours or whatever. That equates to $1 million or whatever, right? And then you're able to get more and don't work your way backwards. So, so it's about having the strategy right, knowing where the value is going to be delivered, and making sure that the value is being delivered earlier on so that the benefit is realized, because you can deliver value but it doesn't bring benefit, right? So making sure where you can, because sometimes it's not possible, but where you can, bringing in the value early, and also making sure the value is tied to benefit earlier on as well. And it makes the conversation easier to everybody within that value stream.
Awesome, thank you. Oh, did you have something to add, Laura?
I think I like also the parallel made. I think you need to find the people who understand the end-to-end process and not only the one in your department. So I think what has helped on our side for some of the discussion is involving and finding, and that was not so well established, it started to be better. Some of the people that can see across department how it's supposed to flow, and then they could support some of the discussion. Like I was replying in an email this morning, some people want to remove our SAP number from our regulatory information management database for some places, because sometimes it's triggering some issue and regulatory people don't understand it that much. Well, the ultimate goal of getting a submission approval is launch a product. And this number is the one telling our manufacturing people that they can launch the product. So now, so if you remove it, we're defeating the end purpose. You have achieved your goal, I have approval, and we do nothing with it as a company. So but this is where is the mind of people? It's like they don't try to see who is using their work and for what is the ultimate goal at the end.
That's a great example.
Love that. Flo, you had a cross-panel question.
Just a question to the couple of you. You talked about data models, and I was... Paul, you mentioned a whole list of different data models for cell therapy, gene therapy. But shouldn't there be just one CMC data model? Maybe I missed something. But
Yeah, and I was thinking about when I sat down, so I think that the bridge is what Laura was talking about, is the high-level single model. Then there are operational data models that you need to run and do that. Cell development, not every single thing that you do in cell scale-up experiment goes anywhere, but you need it to make decisions within there. So what I was talking about was those operational data models
okay.
that still need to be able to be mapped up to the single model,
Okay.
but you can't have a single. You can have a single model to rule them all, but that's really hard.
Yeah.
So your operational models will then feed up key attributes into your overarching deliverable, which is how can I deliver a regulatory approval document, or maybe.
Aligned to that, I think so. It's not, you will not have a super master, super detailed model covering everything, but I think there are this common part of what we have as an example, all to put the same information in the CMC dossier going to regulators. Anyway, here we should be aligned to the common model for that. I think what has been difficult is that we have all done a lot of that in silos. Like in our company, we try to digitalize, we hire our company, we develop a model, we implement it in one single sub-tool and not the other, and actually they may be doing a competing model like 3 departments further. We have had a lot of discussion with some of the experts involved in this standardization, is that how to crack that. In a way, you need to have a common model that is commonly governed, also for the update, because everyone is having different priorities and needs and everything. You need to make it available for free, so as an open source, and you need to force the vendor to use it, where the only incentive is that if we tell them, as a buying company, I want you to be compatible. Maybe they can have another model, but I will want data in that format, just make it happen. It's a requirement, which is what's happening with IDMP data, as an example, for most of the RIM system. Many RIM vendors, 7 years ago, were saying, we will not change our model to adjust to IDMP. In the meantime, they all change their model and adjust it to IDMP. It's just a requirement. So it's how to make that happen, which I think is difficult. CDISC was able to crack it. So I think the proposal this morning is interesting in that direction. Could we crack it as well for the CMC side, like CDISC was able to do? Now it's a standard that everyone is using. It's commonly governed. It's evolving. There are new versions of CDISC. I was reviewing one some months ago. There is an evolution of the model. But there is a full framework that you have to put to make that happen. And that's not that easy.
Awesome. Great tie back to some of the conversation earlier. And other questions in the audience?
Yes.
Aha.
Hi. In that regard, so I was always challenging what information is actually required for a submission, right? Is it all experiments, right? I think Paul mentioned it a little bit, right? No, right? So the data model that you're talking about is probably covering all information or experiments or whatever that's required for a successful submission in the end, right? And then there's, experiments that are maybe required to some extent, but they don't make it into the submission as structured data that's really required, but we still need to somehow be able to capture that, right? So my question is actually to Laurent here. I see your head's nodding, so it's good. So is the work that Pistoia Alliance is doing in the CMC ontology space, is that covering for you all the requirements that you need to do a structured regulatory submission?
I would like to add to that question, other way around. Is this data model covering everything that's going on the lower level, or on the development side of things? And how do we make sure? Because at the end, of course, I want to have a coherent system. It must be compatible. So both directions.
Yeah, so it's one of the big discussions ongoing at the moment, which is why we hope SPQS might be a catalyst to solve that in a way. We have too many competing models, and some part of work done by different people. We see overlap between many of them. The PQ-CMC versus IDOMP is an easy example. I think we found 40 objects where it's the same stuff. They just named it differently and modeled it differently. And we had very long discussion with FDA. They are still not, they are getting there, I think. But they are still not there. And we have that with the Pistoia model. We have that with some of the allotrope work. We have that how do we bring now all of this massive work that has been done together and crystallize it into, okay, now here is the common ones that we want to be using. And there are some bits and pieces everywhere. I think one of the key priority, and I'm the regulatory person, of course, here is what we put in this dossier, because there will be a pressure from the outside. So I can tell you on my side internally, that's how we get money and attention. Like, you will have to provide it in this format. Now, the rest of the data, this development data and everything, this is our own benefits. So it will only be bringing value if we start to develop it commonly, use it across industry, and demonstrate to management, hey, I can exchange data when I work with CMO and regulator, but then for that, we have to make it happen on our side, because there will be no pressure from their side. Automotive industry is doing that. They have tons of CMOs that they work with all the time. There is a single standard model even for documentation that they are using, and they receive and exchange all of the information with their CMOs that way, because for them, they have very small margin and they need to do all of this productivity saving. Like, why can we not make it happen?
Maybe we can. Maybe there's a pre-competitive way to collaborate. Who knew?
You could call it now.
Don't go too far. All right. Well, I think we're at time here. I want to thank our panelists and our speakers today. Those were all fantastic talks. Thank you for sharing your insights. And we'll move to wrap up. But please give a round of applause to the team.